Hello, everyone. Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. We are starting one more live stream. Today is June the 8th, 3:31 p.m. Rio de Janeiro time. I apologize for my voice. I am kind of under the weather, and also this week was a pretty busy week. Many consultations, and I guess I'm kind of talking too much during our consultations. But jokes apart, I'm happy to be here with you. And I'm going to invite for those of you who are watching us live to enter your topics of interest in our chat so we can discuss the subjects live. I also ask you if you are watching, let me know if the sound is reasonable. I'm not going to say perfect because I'm using just my earpods from Apple and not our typical, microphone. But let me know if you guys can understand me and you guys can see me. All right, let me see if there are any chats so far. And no chat so far. So we're gonna take a look. Let's take a look. Let me see if I can share my screen with you. Let's take a look at the news. Right, that doesn't look right. Can you guys see the UOL page? I hope so. As typically, we're going to take a look at the main news. And for once, we don't see President Trump on the first page of UOL portal. Yes, like Brazilians in general, we like a lot to follow U.S. Politics, particularly because naturally, whatever happens in the United States is going to bring consequences worldwide. But I would say UOL, they have more like an obsession with President Trump. So whenever we see news and we don't see something, addressing President Trump, is actually a surprise to me. But the main headline here is about some stats, and this one in particular says that 12 states in Brazil has more people relying on Bolsa Família than on a typical job. Bolsa Familia, for those of you who don't know, is like a social benefit that the federal government pays to like families who don't make enough, like to meet their most basic needs, right? And for you to qualify for the Bolsa Familia, you cannot have a traditional employment. Something that I see very often in the Northeast, right? And this shows like how limited social programs are to certain extent, extent, is that many people they are gonna receive the Bolsa Familia and then they are gonna work on something that is not like formal, so they don't lose the benefit, right? Like so even if they are offered like a typical employment, what we call in Portuguese carteira assinada, meaning that you have, your job position recorded with the government, they're going to say, no, I don't want to do that. If you offer me a job, I'm willing to work for you, but you cannot tell the government that I'm working for you because if you do so, I'm going to lose Bolsa Familia, the social benefit, right? So it's a kind of like scheme to deceive the government, right? Like, I mean, there is no other way to put it, right? Like, I mean, the employer and the employee, they are going to agree on something that is going to naturally, deceive the government so the employee can also receive the employment. That's very typical in the Northeast and the North of Brazil. And naturally, these are the two least developed regions in the country. Okay. All right. Let me check. All right. We have a Marisa. Marisa, good to see you over here. We have a Marisa and Ricardo. They say boa tarde, Dr. Luciano. Amamos sua live. Thank you very much, Marisa. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you for participating. We also have Wayne. Welcome, Wayne. Wayne says video and sound are okay. Thank you for letting us know. And that's helpful information. And by the way, if you're here with us, let us know if there is a topic of your interest that we can discuss live. And let's take a question here. The Real Deal. Oi, Luciano, tudo bem? Tudo bem, Real Deal. I've been living under a student visa for 7 months in Brazil. I want to upgrade to a Viper visa. Do I have to get another police check from my country for this? The Real Deal. So whenever I provide comments here, they are always based on our experience, right? And my experience also says that we can never foretell exactly what they are going to ask you. Typically, they are going to ask you for background check for Brazil and not for your country of residency. Because if you've been leaving Brazil for 7 months, it doesn't make much sense for them to ask for an additional background check abroad. This said, let's say if you've been traveling back to your country of residency, then it may make sense for them to also ask you, on top of the background check from Brazil, a background check from your country of residency, okay? But typically here at the firm, we are able to get our clients approved based on background check for Brazil, okay? This is typically for digital nomad, for some like mid-level types of residencies, because when you apply in Brazil, you never apply for a Viper, right? That's another distinction for you to consider. If you are already in Brazil, you are actually applying for a residency, and the Viper, just as the name says, Vi, that Vi comes from visa, so it's a visa. So visas are issued abroad. So typically, if you wanna apply while in Brazil, you're gonna apply for something that is a residency and not a visa. Okay. Now, if you're securing something like if you're migrating, let's say, from the student to the retirement track, they may ask you a new background check just because they say, listen, you are actually upgrading substantially. And probably last time we checked your records, we were not that concerned about your history. But now that you are applying for the retirement residency, which is going to give you access to permanent residency in a couple of years, yes, we're going to see this thing in more details, right? So from this perspective, the real deal is also possible that even though you've just been living in Brazil without even traveling to your country of residency, that they may ask you for additional background check for your country of residency, right? And if we're talking about the United States, typically they are going to ask for the FBI background check with an apostille on top of it. Alex, welcome, Alex. Boa tarde, Dr. Luciano. Tem uma pergunta sobre a renovação do visto de nômade digital quando o senhor estiver pronto. All right, let's hear it, Alex. What documentation do I need for renewal of my digital nomad visa in Brazil? What will need translation and apostille? Where do I apply for renew to? Good question, Alex. So let me just provide some context for other people watching the live. Very often, a foreign citizen is going to apply for the digital nomad visa abroad, meaning through a consulate, right? And if you are applying through a consulate, many times the consulate is going to provide you with some level of advisory, not advisory itself, but better saying, they are going to answer basic questions that you have. They are going to actually process your digital nomad visa application, right? So let's assume that was the case for Alex. Now, Alex is in Brazil, and Alex wants to renew the digital nomad. And at this point, we don't call it a digital nomad visa anymore, because when you apply in Brazil, either for a fresh digital nomad or for a renewal. We are always talking about residency. Residency. There is no visa. There are no visas issued in Brazil, so we can only have a residency issued in Brazil, and it's more like a technicality. But because visas and residencies they have different requirements, it is important that we use the correct terminology, right? Going back to Alex's scenario, let's assume Alex applied for visa abroad, got the visa, arrived in Brazil, registered with the Brazilian Federal Police, got his RNM card, and now 1 year down the line, he wants to renew. So what's he gonna do? At this point, there is no more, Alex, a consulate, right, to assist you, and Polícia Federal as well. Like, I guarantee they are not gonna provide you any advisory for the renewal. The renewal is done using a web system. The system name is Migrante Web 2.0, and this system is not designed for end users, right? So our recommendation is that you secure the services of some qualified service to assist you with the renewal, right? So again, there is no place for you to go. Like, I wish there was, all right, you go to this office from Polícia Federal and they are going to take care of you. There is no such a thing. You got to use the system called Migrante Web 2.0, and this system is, very technical. Like, there are many options that you need to select over there, and sometimes people are gonna still try to do by themselves. I understand that people want to save money. That's just natural. But unfortunately, many times they're gonna mess up with an application. They are gonna miss times. They are gonna accrue fines. So my recommendation is don't do it. Go hire a professional service, Alex, to help you. Okay. In terms of documents, here at the firm, we don't have like existing lists because we actually assemble a board, a client board specific to your situation. And for the renewal, I cannot address all the documents that you're going to need because, again, this is done on a case by case basis. But I can tell you some of the most common ones, right? Some of the most common ones. So let's talk about the three most common ones, Alex. One of them is going to be your either a work contract or letter of verification, right? You need to show to the Brazilian immigration that you're still working remotely and that you still qualify for the digital nomad. So that's going to be requirement number one. Requirement number two is going to be the financials. So you're going to need to provide either a monthly bank statement showing that you are making at least 1,500 US dollars being paid by the same entity who's providing the verification of work, or if you have $18,000 sitting in a bank account, you gotta be a bank account, right? I'm not talking about CD, I'm not talking about stocks, I'm talking about a bank account. If you have 18,000, that's gonna work as well. And the third requirement is gonna be the background check, right? So I told you, Alex, the three main ones. These are the three main ones that every single renewal application is going to need. And depending on your specifics, other documents may be required as well. Christina Limbo, welcome, Christina. Boa tarde for the investor visa. If I were to buy a house in Saquarema, Rio de Janeiro for 700,000 reais, but plan to invest 300,000 after purchase, would that meet the 1 million reais requirement? No, Christina, it's not. It's not going to meet the requirement. The requirement is that you're sending 1 million reais, right, in the Rio de Janeiro area, right, in the northeast and the north. 700,000 would work, but not in Rio de Janeiro state. So Rio de Janeiro state, you gotta send 1 million reais to buy a property, and this money needs to be sent to the seller, and it needs to match the purchase agreement. It needs to match the deed of sale. So the 100% of the 1 million reais needs to be sent to the seller. Therefore, the 700 plus 300 in either renovation, or construction. This is not gonna qualify, Christina. Yui, he seems sick, but still doing this thing. Everyone hit the like button. Thank you, Yui. Yes, it's like I am under the weather, and this week, this week was like a very busy week, Yuri. A lot of consultations, but yes, I'm happy to be here with you, and I certainly like the message, the support, and yes, please hit the like button. If you hit the like button, it's good for our business, and it's also helpful for other people just like you who will be able to find this content once you like the content. I appreciate you. Bill, oi, Luciano. How did you get that cold? Hope you'll be feeling better real soon. Yeah, Bill, just like, weather changes. And I'm traveling like, between Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro very often, like on a weekly basis. And that's probably how I caught the cold. But I'm feeling all right. Thank you for the concern, Bill. And good to see you over here. Camila, such a hard worker. Wow. Thank you, Camila. I appreciate. Hi, Didi. Good to see you over here as well. Okay. Let's take a look here. Another question. What about the currency exchange? It looks like the US dollar is finally getting a bit weaker when compared to the Brazilian real. Yes, that's true. Like, I mean, the US dollar has dropped potentially, I think, like about 10 to 20 cents. So before, last week, like a US dollar was buying R$ 5 and 70 cents. And this time, like on Friday, actually, a US dollar was buying R$ 5 and 50 plus cents, right? So a drop between 10 and 20 cents. All right. So that's like a small variation, like we saw the variation happening before. I always like to highlight that's not much when you remember that basically like 1 year ago, the US dollar was buying less than R$ 5, right? So even at, like Friday's or today's rate, the US dollar is still very competitive for people interested in buying real estate in Brazil. All right, let's see if we have any other participations. Not yet. All right, so let's address another topic of interest here to the community, getting access to cash in Brazil. So nowadays in Brazil, cash is becoming kind of rare in the market system. We have something called PIX, PIX. PIX is somewhat similar to Zelle in the United States, but I would say it is at least 10 times more advanced. I believe it or not, right? Like we are used to find that technology and financial services are years ahead in the United States when compared to Brazil. But the PIX is a revolutionary, like means of payment in Brazil, and it got to a point in which even people, when they are, like begging for money on the streets, they're gonna say, if you say, "Listen, I don't have cash," they're gonna say, "Well, you can send me a PIX," right? Because the PIX is gonna be associated with different keys. Keys could be like a cell phone, they could be an email address, or they could be pretty much anything, like even a random string of numbers and characters, right? So pretty much everyone can have multiple, PIX keys, and you can provide these keys for people to send you money. Okay, so what we see nowadays is that the number of bank branches in Brazil is being reduced dramatically. And I can give you an actual example, right? Like our office in São Paulo is like in the downtown area, closer to Praça da Sé. And I always, when I have some cash on me, right? Like, I mean, maybe if, the PIC system is unavailable, which, by the way, is very rare to happen, or if I need, I don't know, to hand out money to someone, uh, cash, right? But last time it took me like 30 minutes and I could not find a bank like in the area that would accept the cards that I have to draw money, right? So nowadays, it looks like there is a very strong trend in Brazil for people to no longer use cash. It's an economy that is becoming, like 98% or 99% digital. Everything is being done in digital, and you can use your cell phone to buy and pay and do pretty much everything. Kind of like what you see in China, right? Like in China, they have something very similar. They actually use WeChat, and through WeChat, you can pay with your phone. And nowadays, they are offering an alternative for you to scam, like the palm of your hand. And by just, using the palm of your hand, you can also pay for stuff at the stores. And many, many stores in China, they are no longer accepting cash because cash is becoming like more like an inconvenience than anything else. And we see the same trend in Brazil, which I think it's very interesting, particularly when you compare to the United States. And again, we as Brazilians, we are always benchmarking us according to the US standards, but at least on the payment front, uh, I know that some people have, like restrictions in terms of, the government being able to track every single cent that you're spending. But I think it's pretty astonishing from a technology perspective, the point in which we are today here in Brazil. You can pay with Pix pretty much anything, like from a car. If you go to a dealership and you buy a car, you're gonna pay with Pix. Okay, if you're paying for an ice cream, you're gonna pay with Pix. If you're buying, tickets for the theater, you're gonna pay with Pix. And again, believe it or not, sometimes if you are, on the street and someone asks you for money, like a beggar, and you say, I don't have cash on me, they are gonna, be very quick. All right, you can send me a Pix. All right, so very interesting development in Brazil. And this is also important because many tourists, when they are coming from the United States or other countries, they actually don't have access to the Pix feature, and therefore they are kind of, restricted to the cards, like international cards. The cards are still accepted, right? Let's make this clear. It's not that they are not going to accept your American Express card, your MasterCard, your Visa card. Yes, the cards are still very, convenient, particularly if you're visiting Brazil. But, more often than what we could see, like just a year ago, many places they are kind of saying, listen, you either pay with Pix, or if you don't pay with Pix, I'm either not going to accept your payment, or you're going to pay a higher, a higher price, right? Because Pix, that's another interesting distinction. And at least on that front, this is going to be just like Zelle. There is no loss in the payment, right? Like if you use PayPal, there is always some loss because you need to pay PayPal on top of whatever you send. So if you're sending money to a friend, typically you're gonna send, $100, and they're gonna keep some fee out of it. But if you're using Zelle, you send $100, the other person is gonna get $100. Pix is exactly the same thing. You send 100 reais, the other side is gonna get 100 reais, which, by the way, it triggers another, serious discussion, ongoing discussion that we have. The banks, right? Like banks in general and government, they are anxious to start taking a fee out of Pix. And President Lula actually tried to do that. It was a couple of months ago, but there was such a strong reaction from the public that they quickly changed their mind in terms of, let's say taxing pigs. But this is like in the, in the back of their heads. And I believe they're going to try that again anytime soon. But again, it's pretty amazing that you have like a means of payment in which there is no loss. I mean, basically, you send $100, the other side gets $100. Banks are supporting the tool, and they are actually charging something, but typically to business clients, right? So if you have a personal bank account, like the standard nowadays is that the banks are not going to charge you. But if you're handling like business, if you pay Pix, then they're gonna charge you a fee for you to send the Pix. All right. Let me see if we have any other participation so far. All right. The last one I see here, it was from DD. DD, let me know were you going to ask me something or not. That's the last message I see over here. Just wanna make sure our chat is alive and kicking. Let me know if you guys can post something so I make sure that our chat is not stuck. All right, let's address another topic of interest, visitation to Brazil, particularly for citizens from the US, Australia, and Canada. I'm pretty sure most of you, if not everyone, would know by now that required, you are required to have an e-visa. Okay, the e-visa is specific to citizens from the United States, Canada, and Australia. And if you try to board without some type of visa, even if you have an approved residency, you may have a hard time entering the country unless you have the RNM card, right? So what we see is that, even though foreign citizens could enter Brazil under a residency authorization, even if you are a US citizen, Australian, or, Canadian, uh, the 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 air company, right? The air company, whether American Airlines, Delta, or any company for that matter, they are not gonna allow you to travel to Brazil, and whenever in doubt, they are not gonna let you board. And the reason for that is because there are very steep fines whenever a company arrives in Brazil with passengers without proper, documentation to enter the country. And so, in addition to bringing this passenger back to the country of origin, they are going to pay fines that nowadays are around $10,000 per passenger, okay, which is a lot of money, right? So, because of that, air companies, they are going overboard and they're saying, listen, if I am not absolutely sure that you're going to enter the country, guess what? I'm not going to let you board, right? Also interesting to note that, if that happens to you, they are going to be flexible in terms of rescheduling your flight most of the time without a penalty, right? Because it may look like, well, it's your fault. Now you're going to need to buy a new ticket, but there is also, in their heads, like what they're thinking is, well, it's not just like for the passenger, it's actually for my benefit because I want to be, sure that I'm not going to pay the $10,000 fine, right? So even though it looks like they're doing you a favor, they are actually not doing you a favor. They're actually just, let's say, collaborating with you in order first to make sure that you're going to be able to enter Brazil. And second thing, to make sure that they are not going to pay the $10,000 fine, right? And therefore, that's the reasoning behind the fact that if you don't have the proper visa or documents to enter Brazil, uh, almost sure, or at least that's what we saw happening in every single instance so far. They are going to allow you to rebook the flight without any type of financial penalty on you, other than the losses that you're going to incur naturally because you're probably going to miss, whatever reservations you made for a hotel or Airbnb. Maybe you had like, local flights in Brazil, and of course, like those financial losses are not going to be covered by the air company, but the airfare in particular, the air tickets, typically they are going to let you renew without a fine. All right, just want to make sure I don't see any other participation so far. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor and ping me to let me know that you guys are able to enter stuff in our chat window. Otherwise, if I don't see any messages, I'm going to try to refresh our live, and it doesn't always work as expected. So I would rather make sure that the chat window is stuck before I do the refresh. Let's see if any messages comes my way. All right, I don't see any messages. I'm gonna refresh my live control panel with YouTube. Let's see what happens. All right, I'm back. Can you guys see me? Yes. I'm glad I did a refresh because it looked like there was a bunch of messages. Yep. Let's go back. Let's go back. So I see Yui. Does Brazil have some kind of system like freedom of information law? Can foreigners get some information about immigration from them, general trends and timelines? Yui, yes, we do have. It's more like a constitutional remedy, but it's not like the Freedom of Information Act. I think it's more like, from our perspective, it gotta be something personal, right? So if I suspect that the government has some type of information on me, I can ask the government, listen, government, tell me exactly what you have in your files about me in regards to a certain, type of topic, right? You cannot ask for every single piece of information because that would be a lot for the government to disclose. But you could say, something that is specific, to my immigration or to my, travels abroad, for instance. That's something that you could very easily ask the government using a type of a constitutional request, Yui. Uh, Also interesting to note, this is not going to work for every single piece of information. Sometimes we have clients who are unable to secure either visas or residencies in Brazil for problems that they had like in the past, for instance, like if they have issues with their background check, or if they have, some type of past immigration violation. And in theory, we could ask even on their behalf to see what's in their files. But Brazil has some exclusions to those informations, typically information related to national security, right? Like, so, terrorism, like if there is something in your files related to terrorism, Brazil not necessarily is going to disclose naturally, because if they disclose, they would be giving you information, right? Potentially that could help terrorist networks in the country. So this type of information, even if they have like suspicion of terrorist activities, sometimes even because of similar names, they are not going to let you know about that. Alex, obrigado, Luciano. Espero que você sinta melhor logo. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for the kind words. My Life by Julia. I plan to marry my Brazilian boyfriend soon and then go to Brazil with the family visa for us. This is the best way to go because we want to marry anyways. It's just going to be sooner. Right, Julia. So not sure if that's a question or that's more like an affirmation, right? Because if you're gonna marry in, let's say, if you live in the United States and if you're marrying in the United States, yes, you could have a visa like the family reunification visa. But if you're marrying in Brazil, then there wouldn't be a family visa for you to use. But yes, if you're marrying in the United States, the family reunification visa would allow you to come to Brazil for up to a year, right? And then if you want to secure the permanent residency, then there is a whole separate additional procedure that you're going to need to complete in Brazil. And it is substantially more time consuming and complex than the visa that you're going to get to come to Brazil. All right, Julia, just this distinction. I hope this is helpful. To come to Brazil under the family reunion visa, very easy, good idea. You get up to 12 months. But after you get in Brazil, then the hard work is going to start, which is going to be the application for the permanent residency in Brazil. All right, Julia. Didi, would it be easier to move to Brazil to do the citizenship process, or should I do it from the US? I am a US citizen with a Brazilian mother. I may retire in November of 2026. Didi, there are two ways in which you're going to be considered a Brazilian, or you would secure the Brazilian citizenship. One way is for you to record your birth certificate in a Brazilian consulate in the US. And after this recording, you do an additional recording in Brazil. And if you follow those two steps, you would secure the Brazilian citizenship even without coming to Brazil. The second track happens for people who have recorded their birth certificates in Brazil without first recording at the consulate. If they do that, they may potentially need to come to Brazil for the confirmation by means of a federal judge. All right. So these are the two tracks, Didi. But typically, the best approach is for you to record your birth certificate in the US at a consulate, and then record in Brazil. There is no need for you to come to Brazil right now. There may be complications regarding, change of names and other scenarios that would make this process less straightforward for sure. Okay. Camila Sanier, hi, Dr. Luciano. If I'm under a student visa or any other temporary citizen visa, am I qualified for the Brazilian welfare that you were talking about earlier? Not really, Camila. That's an interesting question because the Brazilian Constitution it's much more how can I say much more aggressive in terms of giving foreign citizens rights that are typically of local citizens, right? Like in the United States, this question would make zero sense, right? Because in the United States, like students or, like other temporary, visas, people would never expect such a thing. But in Brazil, yes, it does make sense because the Brazilian constitution says, listen, if there is someone living in Brazil, even on a temporary basis, we want this person to have as many benefits as possible or as close as possible to a Brazilian national. All right. Now, this said, I think, Camila, that the distinction here is going to be on the work component, right? Because when you are in Brazil under a student visa or, a digital nomad, naturally, you're not here to work. So, it wouldn't make sense for you to get access to the welfare that we're talking about. But a very interesting question, right? Because it highlights how Brazil is different from other countries in the sense of extending benefits that are not typical to visitors. Christina, thanks for your response. You're welcome, Christina. As a follow-up, if I buy two properties for 500,000 each, would that qualify for an investor visa? Yes, Christina, we do have clients like this who buy like two properties, typically here at the firm from the same vendor, from the same seller. And then, yes, you are able to apply for the investor visa as long as both properties are qualifying and as long as you send the money in a qualifying manner. All right. Are there any banks offering conta de não residente since they are ending the CDEs after resolução conjunta 1333/2024? All right. So let's see the distinction here from Money Baller. A conta de não residente, conta, conta de conta de destinatário estrangeiro. I'm not sure the distinction is correct right here. That I'm trying to remember the CDE, right? The CDE type of account. I am more familiar, Money Baller, with the CNR, and the CNR like is being provided by many banks, right? I can tell you, some banks that are offering this account. For instance, Banco Brasa, BDT, Pactual, and the other one is like Rendimento, right? So there are several banks, a money baller offering a CNR account. For those of you who don't know, a CNR account, just as the name says, conta de não residente, is a special type of bank account for those who are not residing in Brazil, right? For the banks we work with, typically they provide the same account to either a foreign citizen who's not a resident in Brazil, meaning a U.S. citizen who's just a visitor, or it could also be a Brazilian who's living abroad, right? So the CDE, if I'm not mistaken, is a conta com domicílio no exterior, right? Or an account for those who have a domicile abroad. Okay, and they are very similar. I don't know if banks are having a distinction right now, Moneyballer. But what I know is that these banks that I told you, they are offering CNR accounts as we speak, and we actually offer that as a service. Like for those of you who don't want to, guess by yourself or try to find the best bank, you can hire this service. We're gonna help you open a non-resident bank account in Brazil, so you can send some money ahead of time. Like if you're gonna have a vacation, if you're gonna stay for an extended period in Brazil, or even if you're gonna buy property in Brazil as well. All right. Um, Joseph, bom dia. Morning, Joseph. What is the processing time for digital nomad visa now? I am applying from Fortaleza soon. Joseph, processing time is about a month and a half, right? And maybe to disclose the timeline here at the firm, typically it takes our team and the applicants 1 month to gather the documents, 1 week to have everything translated into Portuguese, and once we file the application, the Brazilian immigration is going to review the application in about a month and a half. All right, Camila. Hi, Dr. Luciano. You said tourists are not able to use Pix. Why is that? Is it a government-led app? Yes. So the Pix platform was developed by the government. And by the way, kudos to the Bolsonaro administration, which was the administration who created the Pix and so many other, interesting innovations from a government perspective, right? And the idea it was for this tool to work naturally for Brazilians, right? Not like, foreign citizens. But just like those accounts I told you guys about the non-resident bank accounts, some of those banks, they are going to include the Pix feature in the bank account. So even for foreign citizens nowadays, Camila, if you open the right type of non-resident bank account, yes, you can use Pix as well. Wayne, I send money to my wife in Brazil from my bank account to her Pix account, and then she pays for our condo rental by her Pix. There you go, Wayne. There you go. So she uses her Pix account. Now, just a heads up, Wayne, and this is probably more as a heads up for you to seek, like a taxation advisory. But if you guys, let's say, because you are from abroad, I assume, right? Let's say if your Brazilian wife, if she lives abroad, she should not have a typical Brazilian account. Okay, like a typical Brazilian bank account are not intended for Brazilians who are living abroad. Okay, and the consequence of using these accounts is that the Brazilian taxation authority, the Brazilian Revenue Service, could assume that this is an indication that your wife is actually a tax resident, meaning that whatever income you guys perceive abroad should be taxed in Brazil as well, right? So again, more like a heads up that it does work very well for the purpose of paying your condo rental, but make sure that she's not using a typical everyday Brazilian bank account because this is a big no, all right? If you use that bank account, you create a presumption that you guys are tax residents in Brazil. All right. All right. Yeah, I see all the messages here about my chat is stuck. I'm glad I did refresh. Um, Joe, may you put in the chat how people can get in touch with you? So, Joe, just providing some context, like our firm, nowadays has a lot of professionals. Most of the activities here at the firm, they are done by our team, right? If you go to our website, oliveiralawyers.com, you check it out about us page, you're gonna see we have about 20 professionals who actually do, all the hard work over here. Now, if you want to schedule a consultation, Joe, what you can do, you can come to our website, and then in our About Us page, you can go to schedule a consultation. Okay, and when you schedule a consultation, if you want to discuss with me, you can say, listen, I would like to have a consultation with Luciano Oliveira, and I'm certainly happy to, take your consultation in particular, Jojo. All right. Now we don't have like, some people say, well, can I have your WhatsApp, right? Can I have your Instagram? Instagram, I don't use, Instagram, I don't use WhatsApp. We use it mostly here at the firm to have like a group chats for clients. So let's say if you're using our service for a property acquisition, then we form a group chat, including you as the client and four other people. Typically, our work team, they're going to have five people. I'm going to be in the loop as well, but I am just like unable to follow up. Like on WhatsApp, I do receive about 200 messages through WhatsApp, and they are all like related to the group chats that we have for clients. All right, Jojo. But again, I'm very happy to take your consultation. And yes, I can write in the chat. the website name over here. Thank you for asking, Jojo. So just come to our website about us, schedule a consultation, and we're gonna be happy to, have a one-on-one consultation with you. TD, thank you so much. I wish you a speedy recovery, chicken soup with a lot of garlic and onions. Thank you for sharing. I'm certainly gonna follow this advice. It sounds like good advice, DD. All right, Camila is highlighting yes. Thank you, Camila, for chiming in. Yes, you can schedule an appointment through our website. And all those banks you mentioned only offer CDEs. Apparently, not those. Those should be replaced with CNRs, but I don't see any banks that offer CNRs. They do offer money baller. They do offer because we open them every week. Okay. So if you are uncertain, if you have more questions on that, happy to take a consultation and happy to help you open a CNR. We open CNRs accounts every single week, right? They are not CDs, they are CNRs, even like in the paperwork. That's how they are addressed. Okay, but happy to further assist if you want to just send an email message asking us to confirm that yes, we can help you open a CNR. That may be a good next step. All right. Thank you, Camila. Thank you for chiming in. Yes, we have lots of good reviews. We're very proud of the work we do at the office. Like we're just like maniacs, like when it comes to help our clients meet their needs. And that's that's something we really enjoy doing, right? Like I mean, we unfortunately we cannot help everyone very often here at the firm. Like unfortunately, we may need to decline the cases, particularly when we don't think we are a good match, particularly when we think we are unable to provide a good service. So very often people are going to come to us, and unfortunately, we're going to need to decline. But whenever we decline, we actually provide some referrals. Like we have other firms here in Brazil who, we've been working with over the years. So whenever we have a chance, we say, listen, we are unable to assist, but maybe you could try this, this other firm. Okay. But whenever we take someone on board, we really try to do our best and deliver what you buy, right? And I think, it sounds like, a very low expectation, right? Like you buy something from someone else and this person says, all right, I'm going to deliver what you buy, right? But unfortunately, for those of you who are experienced in Brazil, that does not always happen, particularly with legal services, right? What we see happening with legal services very often is that people are going to look at our fees. They're going to say, well, your fees are just like the fees I see in the United States. And say, yes, that's what you're going to pay typically for a good law firm in Brazil. You're going to pay just the same, the same fees, professional fees you would pay in the US. And then, they say, well, I'm going to go elsewhere. And then they're going to pay half of the fee or sometimes one third of the fees that we practice. And guess what? They are not going to get what they're buying, right? Like they're going to pay good money and not get the service. So this is something that we're extremely conscious about. If people, buy our service, right? Like they should receive what they are paying for. And again, unfortunately, it does sound like it is a differentiation here at the firm that we deliver what we're selling, right? So thank you so much, Camila, for chiming in. Absolutely, Moneyballer. Thank you for showing up. I hope to, have your participation here again. Um, when is the next live stream? Good question, Bill. Thank you for asking. So next live stream is gonna be on the 18th, right? So today is Sunday. We're gonna skip. We're gonna skip. Let me see if it is on the 18th. All right, let me take a look here. So we're not gonna have a live stream on Wednesday, right? Typically we have live streams on Sundays and Wednesday. We're gonna skip the 11th, and we're gonna skip the 15th. So yes, our next one is gonna be on the 18th, which is gonna be a Wednesday, right? So we're skipping this Wednesday, uh, June the 11th. We are skipping next Sunday, June the 15th, but we are back on June the 18th, and I hope with a better voice, right? So you guys don't need to, hear my weird voice because of, again, the cold. And also, just like this was a very busy week, I took a lot of consultations, more than the usual, because this coming week I wasn't going to take any consultation. So I said, you know what? I want to have every single person who needs a consultation taken care of. And some of the days I had like 10 meetings in a day, right? 10 meetings in which most of the time I'm just talking. Okay. Of course, like there is a interaction, our clients, they are asking questions. But whenever you have a consultation with me, most of the time I'm talking, and sharing my experience. So this week was just crazy. And that's why I have my voice like this. But, I hope that next time my voice is going to be just fine. And thank you, Bill. Thank you for asking. Next live stream again is going to be on Wednesday, not this Wednesday, next Wednesday, June the 18th. Let's take a final question over here. It's going to be a question from Julia. I'm planning on hiring you before I go over with the family reunion visa because I will need to get a shipping container to move my stuff from the US. And I'm so excited to get married soon. We're excited for you as well, Julia. And we are very proud of assisting, right? Like, bi-national couples just like you, particularly between a Brazilian and a US citizen. And we've been doing that for a while. So we also assist with the marriage. Sometimes people want to marry in Brazil. They want to follow the so-called Utah track. Utah has a video conference marriage, which is very convenient for couples in which the Brazilian party cannot go to the United States and the US citizen has a hard time getting the documents to marry in Brazil. So we also assist with the marriage itself. We have Livia. Livia, she's originally from a cartório, from a registry, so she knows everything inside out. So we're going to be very happy to participate in your journey, Julia. And there are many different things we can help you with. And yes, I'm happy for you and excited as well. So I wanna, finish today. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for your patience with my voice. If you haven't liked our live stream so far, please go ahead and like. It is good for our business. It's good for other people just like you who would like to find such content. And I hope to see you again on June the 18th, not this coming Wednesday, the one following. And you guys have a blessed rest of your Sunday.